Think deliberately, live deliberately, deliberate documentary.
Keeling Dorogi is a historian, a teacher, and a dear friend. Keeling, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Quentin. I am excited to be here.
So, to start, I'm curious what your first experience with technology was in your life.
Well, I would have to go. The one that sticks out most to me would be when I was in one of my earlier memories, like my first month at preschool. I remember watching movies there on the old VHS tapes, which were still in use when you and I were very little, but those quickly went by the wayside for DVDs and CDs. That would have to be the first time I deliberately remember using technology, or at least, watching somebody else much older than me use the technology.
Do you remember the types of movies that you would watch?
Oh, goodness. Well, we watched a ton of Scooby Doo. We watched a lot of, Land Before Time, classic Pixar Disney movies. I love Beauty and the Beast. All those classics, 101 Dalmatians, things like that.
And what are some of the things that stuck with you in your early experiences when it comes to watching movies or listening to music or playing games? What did technology allow you to do that you couldn't do before?
Well, most of my use of technology was for entertainment purposes, be
Mhm.
it movies, video games, music, what have you. So that is certainly how I often used it. What was your question again?
I'm curious what tech did for you that you weren't able to do before, and just what did it mean to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was definitely a big escape. I was a huge reader growing up. As you recall, living next to us, we didn't have video games at my house. So in the early years of us knowing each other, that was one of the huge links between you, my brother, and your brother was we'd go over and we would play video games in your basement. Some of my dearest childhood memories are, playing Wii hockey, and all those other games. We became like actually attached. Like we cried when Brooklyn, this Call of Duty character, died. There were real tears there. And it's especially now, growing up, it was very limited. My parents didn't really believe in giving me access to technology, but now that I've grown older and I'm an adult, I can make my own decisions. I've definitely found that in general, it's opened up a lot of new ways to look at the world, connect to the greater wide world around me, and to appreciate the things I enjoy, be it podcasts talking about topics that I find interesting, be it music that I love, be it how I've been watching every single game of the World Cup that's going on right now. So it certainly, for me personally, had a positive impact on my life.
Technology gives lots of freedom, whether that is connecting with others, connecting to events like the World Cup. Our generation is the birth of social media and these large platforms where you're getting these connections, and streaming is now so popular for how we view pretty much everything. And people do live streams now, and that's so entertaining for so many people. What do you think that impact is fueled by? What do you think motivates people to join streams rather than channels?
Well, I think there's a myriad of factors on what pushes people to dive deeper into the online world. Being a teacher by trade, one thing I do see, and what I think that drives younger people, I say that being a younger person, to pursue more online and avenues of socialization is a real lack of physical, face to face intercommunication skills. You see it every day. I teach high school, but talk to anybody who teaches young kids. It's certainly getting worse and worse. We have not yet seen it shift the other way. Kids don't really know how to interact with each other in person. They're very sheltered. And I think it's in part because this is the first generation to grow up with this stuff. People don't, it's not really in the zeitgeist yet about how damaging it can be for young people. And so, by the fact that they lack those skills, I mean, you remember being a teenager, people who didn't have those social skills and that social credit, and they didn't develop it. So they turned to online platforms, made connections online, but as great as that is, we both know that doesn't replace real connection. So I think that's one of the things that's fueling the increasing growth of people going on live streams, having like these parasocial relationships with streamers. One of the things that I can like see why people like it, but to me personally, it doesn't make any sense.
How did you experience that in high school? And are there comparisons to how you experienced it as a student and now how you experience it from the perspective of a teacher?
Yeah, well, when I was in high school, as you recall, I didn't get my first flip phone until my sophomore year of high school. I did not get a true smartphone until my junior year of high school. So I was very much not an early adopter of social media. However, most, if not all, of my friends, such as yourself, were. Now, I think I'm lucky. I was very mad at the time, but I think looking back, I'm kind of lucky. I don't see myself as a teenager making smart decisions if I had full access to social media at, like, let's say sixth grade level. I think it would have made poor choices on what I posted, what I said, and I think it would have hurt my self-esteem growing up. I was not a terribly confident child. I was friends with a very small select group of people. I think that if I did get access to it, I mean, I saw acquaintances through sports or clubs. I saw them being like really negatively impacted. Like the rumor mill, my God, you remember the rumor mill and
Hmm.
how awful it could be for people. I'll bring up Dustin, my dear friend Dustin. There was a person who anonymously ran a meme page at the
Hmm.
high school who kept on posting memes about Dustin, but Dustin hated it. Anytime somebody brought it up to him, he would get really upset. And Dustin had a big support group around him. You remember him, he was extremely confident in himself.
Hmm.
So if you take a teenager who lacks that innate self confidence or doesn't have a support circle of good friends or a good home life like we all had, it's very easy to see really unhealthy habits develop. It's something I see now as an educator, especially of teenagers, where it's all about the online world and social media. I had in December, the first day back from Christmas break, two kids walked into period one. I said, "Oh, hey guys, good to see you." They planned to fight each other on social media when they came back from Christmas break, walked into my classroom like first 5 minutes back from break and started throwing down in there. That's like physical side of it. And then of course, you've got the whole bullying issue, which is really big. Personally, I think it's really negative is for teenage girls.
Mm.
They're extremely vulnerable, like on social media, not just from predatory adults, but also from their peers. Being a teenager at any level in human history, at any time, there's the rumor mill that goes around, and it really hurts teenage girls. Then you combine it with technology, where you're making poor choices, get sent around to the whole. What does that do to somebody's self esteem? I mean,
Right.
it's no surprise that we have increasing levels of mental health issues and suicide in the nation, especially amongst young people. It's just one of those problems that being on the other side of the coin as a child, where I didn't really see a ton of it personally, but I could see some of the effects. Now, being an educator, I have not seen a ton of good come from it, being at the top of education looking down.
Right. That's something that I think affects all people in any demographic or economic standing is that impact of that is something that I think resonates with a lot of people is there's a lot of fear that becomes associated with what we're putting out there, wanting to be accepted, all of that is so magnified by the use of social media. And we talk about highlight reels, right? So many people, what they do post is the very best stuff. And when you're scrolling these things and you're seeing that and you're comparing yourself to that, it can be super damaging from a grander perspective. And you're seeing internet influencers, whether that's through fitness or modeling, those particularly contribute to insecurity amongst younger people. And then those things become part of the rumor mill, right? Lots of insults or memes and that sort of stuff. So that's definitely something that technology has significantly contributed to, particularly that social media has catalyzed constant connection and wondering what other people are going to think, how they're going to react, and how they're going to interact with what we put out there. Something that I find super fascinating that is as recent as the last decade is tracking. Not just families, but friend groups are able to completely track somebody's location day to day, see where they're driving to, how fast they're driving, how long they stayed somewhere. And there are things about that that can be good. Like if somebody's in a dangerous situation, then you have the capacity to intervene, show up for somebody. But there's also ways at a smaller micro level that allow almost an auditing of your friend's life and behavior, which is something that has never existed before. And that's a common problem that you'll see is people will be upset based on knowing what you're doing, which is something totally unique. I'm curious to your perspective on that.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's a fine line
Mm.
with the healthy use of tracking. I think it's one of those things where it's really hard to walk a really fine line between when it crosses into the unhealthy or detrimental. We have teenagers, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids whose mom and dad are attached at the hip with them, tracking where they are at all times, texting their kids constantly while they're at school. Hey, do you need me to bring you anything? Hey, can you come pick me up? I don't want to be here today. Things like
Mm.
that. I think it can lead to some unhealthy attachment issues. I'm
Mm.
not a parent, neither of us are yet.
Mm.
However, one of the key things outside looking in, one of the most difficult parts of being a parent seems to be letting go,
Mm.
taking your hands off, giving kids increased freedom. Otherwise, you end up with situations where people are just smothered and stifled. And that can either explode into unhealthy relationships with parents and family, or it
Mm.
can stunt the growth of those people.
A point you made that really resonates is that it's a balance because we're talking right now about a lot of the detriment that comes with social media, with technology. But it is also true that there are lots of benefits to using technology. Take a perspective of tracking, for example. It's reasonable that a parent, especially a parent of a younger child, an emerging adolescent, somebody who maybe just got their license, and before that, I can see how that can be a valuable tool. Just like social media can be a valuable tool in ways where there are benefits of being connected to global happenings. There are benefits of having a platform to meet new people and engage with people and to share interests. So it is a balance and it is about how the technology is utilized. The advancements do come with risks, but they also have come with significant benefits. How we're able to talk to each other now over the phone instantly we're able to be on calls like this, look each other face to face, connection and the ability to communicate has advanced so much that is valuable too. Using technology in ways that benefit ourselves and benefit others is going to be super important, especially going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there for sure. There's definitely a lot of benefits, like you brought up. The rate of change in technology is increasing. I think therein lies a rather insidious danger, in
Mm,
my opinion, to the cohesion of our entire species. I mean, we go back to the Middle Ages, kings, queens, castles. You go back from that, like let's say 1300, you go back 1,000 years, it's still
mm,
roughly the same technology. You've still got large stone buildings. You've got, people building aquifers, people building irrigation, like paper books. I mean, it was scrolls way back when. But the big advancement was the advancement in metallurgy, knights, things like that. You jump ahead another 500 years to 1800, technology is growing. You've got the first inoculations. It's
Describe what inoculation is.
a
I'm just,
vaccine.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. Then, of course, we hit the previous century, the 20th century. I think about the world my great grandfather grew up in. My great grandfather was born in Austria Hungary, a nation that doesn't exist anymore. He grew up dueling people,
Mm,
like with sabers,
mhm,
duels. My grandfather loves to tell the story of how the old fencing sabers bend a lot. So if you got it right, you'd flick over somebody's shoulder and it would hit them in the back. So my great great grandfather, when my great grandfather came home with scars on his back, was furious because he thought he turned his back in a duel and
mm,
tried to run. That's the kind of society that we enter into the last century with. Somebody born in 1900 grows up in a house without electricity, without paved roads, horses everywhere, cars are just in the big cities. There's not even any radios, really, no television, things like that. If they live to be 70, they've watched the moon landings. We went from the first flight in the 1910s to
mm.
landing on the moon in 50 years. And it's only increased from that pace, which is amazing for human advancement and human technology. But the issue is that our society and our species can't keep up with that rate of development in a healthy and sustainable way. So of course, medical advancements, things like that, it's good that it's increasing at that fast rate.
Mm.
But other technologies, such as to open the biggest can of worms you possibly could, artificial intelligence, social media, calling people, tracking people, all of
Mm.
these technologies, it's increased at such a rate that I fear we are losing our ability to interact with it in a healthy way. The rate of technological change is only going to keep advancing. By the time you and I are our parents' age, the nation's going to be unrecognizable from when we were growing up.
Right.
They're starting to see in education, kids can't read, they can't talk to each other, they rely on artificial intelligence to do everything for them. They don't have interests, they don't have hobbies, they feel
Mm.
like shells of human beings just going through the
Mm.
motions. It'd have to take a huge amount of change to make it to try to fix that.
Your perspective is a rich one when it comes to information about how societies have been impacted with significant changes, whether that be through technology, through geopolitics, through war, how we, as a global people, have responded and adapted to change on these large scales and how that applies to today.
Well, as anybody who's either experienced the previous century or read about it, learned about it, it's the century of globalization, not just physical travel times, connectivity on the internet, and economics especially. The world is interconnected. This is why, as an American in a republic, as a voter, you should care and you
Mm,
should know about what's going on in some faraway, dusty desert that you've never heard of because it
mm,
has impacts on your life.
mhm,
You know, why is it that if oil ships can't transit through the Strait of Hormuz in some
mm,
faraway land in Arabia,
mhm,
why does that make it so when I go to the gas station in Gardner, Maine, why is my gas more expensive? Like these things have an impact and they do
mhm.
matter deeply. I mean, and on top of all of it, you can hop on a plane, be in Hong Kong in 12 hours. I mean,
Right.
that's the whole other thing. The world is becoming interconnected, and I think we can either try to accept that and dive into it and leverage it through global cooperation, or we can harm the nation
Mm,
by thinking that we can go back to a mystical, magical past and the way things were. More
mm,
specifically, the way this nation was after World War II. America was the only major power to come through the war unscathed on the home front. There was
mm,
no fighting at home.
mhm,
We emerged as the most powerful nation that had ever existed in human history, and we still are.
mm,
But this kind of mythical idea that that kind of economic situation can't exist again in this nation simply isn't possible.
mm,
Uh, for example, everything that runs, like almost all electronics in the country, run on computer chips now. Even
mm,
fridges have computer chips now.
mm,
So and the thing is with those like chips and those like advanced like rare minerals, rare metals, those are only found in certain parts of the world, such as in China.
mm,
Those chips are then made in Taiwan. Now, we can say that, whatever, like we're going to bring American stuff back here. Like that's not how that works because it's the stuff you need to do these things is in other parts of the world.
mm,
Now, we can have a healthy global society or an unhealthy global society. We can have a global society where nations work together for the common good, and provide aid to countries such as Somalia who are suffering and aren't stable. We can help those countries. And this has been the foundation of American foreign policy since Woodrow Wilson with his 12, 14 points following the
mhm,
end of World War One. That has been the foundation of the global order since World War One. It's the foundation of the United Nations. It's the foundation of NATO. It's the foundation of what every single policymaker in Washington, D.C. has been attempting to do for the last 100 plus years.
Mm.
So it has made the pace of technological change over the past century has connected the globe. And we can either choose to accept this
mm,
and continue to try to leverage it in a healthy way, or we can kind of revert back to like 2 centuries ago and become an isolationist nation, which is kicking and screaming and whining about a mystical past that never really existed.
mm,
So I think it's important that in terms of globalization, we accept it and we work together. I firmly believe looking into the far future of our species, that is the only way in which we can truly thrive and escape off of and become a multiplanetary species. I struggle to see a way in which we can helpfully expand off of our home world, looking far into the future. Um,
mhm.
and when we're so divided, I really think we need to try to unite, but like and be more cooperative as nations. But alas, that was way off topic.
That was completely fascinating. And what I want to hear are some of those base policies that hold up globalization and hold up cooperative global organizations. What are some of those things that are in place to ensure cooperation?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things, so one thing that people kind of struggle and we kind of take for granted is freedom of navigation. You
Mm,
know, it is like foundational to the world order, which, not being an American patriot here, is like almost 90% thanks to the efforts of the United States.
Mm,
American foreign policy is hinges upon the belief that there will be less war, less conflict, and less suffering if
mm,
every country in the world has a chance to trade freely with the rest of the world. This is
mm,
what Woodrow Wilson believed was the cause of all wars. Woodrow Wilson, many problems, he kind of hit the nail on the head there. And he firmly, like, this is what we've tried to prevent since World War One. We didn't get our way. Thank you, France and Britain, with the Treaty of Versailles. But post World War II, we got our way. Now, post World War II, we have seen not just like economically, the world, the average living situation for the average person has continued to go up and up and up.
mm,
With all the problems that come with our late stage capitalism, the reality is that the living situation for the average person on this planet has gotten better.
mm,
Now, you asked for like specific, like what are these mechanisms that
mm,
actually hold this in place? Well, so if you want to talk, so there's lots of different sides to peel apart the layers of this onion. On the top layer is the global system of trade. Now, trade, as we're all aware, like you can't. The computers we're recording this on now are made from parts all over the world.
mm,
So, how does one trade throughout the world? Well, number one, it is like trading treaties upon which you go to other countries, businesses make agreements with each other. And the important thing is that governments avoid protectionism,
mm,
where let's say there is like in avoiding going into tariff wars. It's this concept of a free market upon
mm,
which different companies are able to do as they will around the globe, sell goods, manufacture goods, transport goods. But then the issue that is inherent with it is, do you allow Toyota, the Japanese car company, to make and sell cars in your country?
mm,
And if you are a proponent of this globalist system, then it has to be a yes. But that all goes back to, I mean, in the words of, I believe it was Joseph Stalin, all political power emanates from the barrel of a gun. It
mm,
has to be enforced.
mm,
There are many people who do not believe in this kind of world order. Um, multipolar, a multipolar world order. For example, the Chinese. Chinese were the superpower for most of their history. They are not. They want to be again. They are constantly pushing the idea of a multipolar world, in meaning that the world does not just orbit around the United States of America, it has multiple things it orbits around.
mm,
Now, the issue with that is that this multipolar world order would essentially uh, destroy. I mean, we've just seen now with the conflict with Iran that our nation is for some reason swallowed up in right now. Iran, we've just signed or are about to sign a ceasefire peace treaty with Iran, which
mm,
recognizes their sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. That destroys 100 plus years of American foreign policy, in which you cannot, like, access of navigation and trade is foundational to improving the lives of people around the world. I mean, and not to mention the United Nations Charter on Human Rights. You've got all these trade agreements. For example, the CHIPS Act passed by Joseph Biden when he was president in his term. The CHIPS Act was monumental legislation,
mm,
which increased our trade partnership with Japan, Korea, and Taiwan, three of our
mm,
most important allies, both politically, economically, and militarily in Asia and
mm,
socially. They are friends of our nation. And what
mm,
this act did was it encouraged American companies to purchase goods such as like computer chips or components for computer chips from those three countries. And it encouraged those three countries giving them kickbacks, settlements, decreasing tariffs, what have you, to sell their stuff, trade with American companies. Now, this has geopolitical implications as well, because who's getting stonewalled by this? Well, it's China who's getting stonewalled by this, because China right now has the dominant market on it. But anywho's long-winded answer. Um, it's essentially the never end. It's much like democracy. It's a never-ending struggle of the people who are growing up in this world to continue to protect it. Because this world in which you can hop on a plane, fly to Hong Kong, this world in which we have these computers, we live in so much, we live in the way we live is unfathomable to a French king during the French Revolution. You
Mhm.
know, it's the level of comfort we live in. It's taken for granted, but it's not. It's the product of a global system, which generations of Americans and our allies around the world have bled for, have fought for, and have continued to uphold uh, for almost a little over 100 years. It's incredibly important that we continue to try to uphold the free flow of trade and commerce around the world, not just for us, but it benefits the people of the world. Sorry,
Mm.
that was a little long one. Did I actually answer your question, or did I just kind of go off topic?
You absolutely did. And something that I'll say now is no more apologizing for going in depth and peeling layers back. I think that's incredibly important to be informative. And because we are having these conversations where the topics are kind of heavy, where they're large, they have significant implications geopolitically, socially, economically, it's important to take that apart in chunks, take that apart in pieces where it is digestible. And so when we engage in that way, and that is in many ways the point of this show in general, don't apologize for that because that is what this is for, is to be deliberate about understanding what has gone on in the past, what is happening now, and how we can influence it in a way that promotes a better future for everybody across all of those modes. And with that being said, we talk about Stormy just wanted to join the stream. When we talk about these large scale agreements, policies, things that govern how we approach globalization, how we approach trade, commerce, and infrastructure, societal infrastructure. What are some important things that we need to consider and integrate to strive for prosperity? Because at the end of the day, at the end of the discussion, what we're striving for is a utopia of sorts with the advancements of technology and of human connection. We discussed how there are parts of how we live now that are unfathomable to people of the past. And you could even do that to, the adults and older adults that were around in the 50s, 60s, 70s, telling them what things look like now is a radical change. And that change is increasing in speed. They talk about a smooth exponential, if you will, where there's little changes, and then it significantly increases. We're heading there. We talked about artificial intelligence earlier. That is another piece. People talk about artificial general intelligence, what that's going to mean when lots of the digital tasks that we do can be completed by agentic AI. Task looping, essentially, is what that is. And what are some of the guiding principles that we need to ensure that as these changes occur and as these changes increase in volume as well as speed, what are some of the base things that we can do to ensure that it it promotes prosperity?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think first and foremost, we need to dispel the notion that what as individuals we think or feel it is unimportant. We
Hmm.
are Americans. We live in a republic. In a republic, you are a citizen. You vote. Your vote matters. You elect people to vote on your behalf in a republic. So, number one, I think it's important that we don't just, punt it and say, whatever, like it doesn't matter. It does matter. And additionally, I think it's really important not to continue to make this mistake that previous peoples have made and just saying this is not like this is a problem for future generations, for future peoples. I think that's really unhealthy. For example, global warming, like where we're at now. No, I'm not blame generations for it. It's human nature. And we're gonna obviously, as generation is Gen Z, we're gonna cause problems that other generations after us are going to have to deal with. That's simply part of human nature. However, we need to keep in mind, and as voters, is we have to, especially when you brought up AI,
Hmm.
we have to decide what does it mean to be a human being and to be an American.
Hmm.
So, and like to be a citizen of this globe, I have a I have a definition of it. You might have a different definition of it. I think our definitions of what it means to be a human being. And of course, I'm approaching this from the perspective of a teacher.
Hmm.
Um, it's probably varies a lot differently from yours in terms of the use and prevalence of artificial intelligence. Like
Hmm.
we were literally just talking like 2 days ago about it. It is, so that certainly varies. Um, however, we I really think the basis of it is that we have to keep in mind what do we envision our future to be. My vision of a future for America and for the world is different from what your vision is. It is different from what Elon Musk's vision is. It
Hmm.
is different from what um, Braden's vision, if he even has one, of America is. So it's important to can have these national debates because it is not just the nine wealthiest people in America. They're not the ones who make the decisions. We are. And if, as a collective, we want to go a certain way, that is how it will go. We cannot afford to give up and abdicate our responsibility. That is so incredibly irresponsible. And additionally, I think we have to be consider ethical constraints and boundaries moving
Hmm.
forward with trying to achieve this concept of a utopia. I think it's like, do the ends justify the means?
Hmm.
Uh, I personally don't think so in this instance. I believe that if we can achieve a utopia, essentially, like by virtual reality, or it cheapens existence,
Hmm.
in my opinion. Uh, I think an essential part of being a human being is struggle.
Hmm.
We must strive and overcome difficult circumstances that
Hmm.
helps us grow. You don't grow without adversity.
Hmm.
Now, and I think it's important that people face adversity in their lives, what have you. I'm not advocating for human suffering. I am simply advocating that I think it's great to strive for a better tomorrow, but we striving for a perfect world cheapens what it means to be a human being, in my opinion.
Mm,
I don't wish to live like I don't wish to live forever. You
mm,
know, very different from my mother, who you are well aware of. My mom wants to live to be 200 years old. I have no
mm,
desire for that.
mm,
Um, I think striving for perfection in the next 100 years is going to cheapen. Like I worry for the world my great grandchildren will grow up in. It's going to be so unrecognizably different. I can barely even think about it, like the kind of world they're going to grow up in. Uh, so I really do feel that it is important not to cede our autonomy as American citizens, as members of this republic, to um, the economic powers that be who wish to see it go. If the people want it to go that way, great. We're a republic. That's how it works. But I don't envision America, the vision of what the people of the United States want America to be aligns with what Peter Thiel, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk um, wish it to be. So that is what I have to say on that in terms of guiding America's economic development. But in terms of global, I think we need to continue to try to integrate with the world around us. We cannot isolate. We thought we would have learned our lesson in the 1930s about isolation. Guess what? We didn't. And the world's only grown to be even more interconnected socially, politically, and economically since then. You cannot have an isolated America if you want America to be the global superpower.
mm,
If you don't want America to be the global superpower, great. I am not yet willing to cede what is, quite frankly, the empire. We are an empire.
mm,
Uh, we must continue to work with people around the world in a healthy way. We cannot continue to make the mistakes of the past upon which we exploit the different peoples of the world for our economic benefit.
mm,
For example, just take Africa for example. The De Boer Mining Company. They are a company. They're Dutch. They dominate almost 90% plus of the world's diamond trades.
mm,
All those diamonds they got were built on the backs of exploiting African labor during colonialism. Or now, the lithium that goes into your nice new electronic cars, or our phone batteries, or our computer batteries. A lot of that lithium is mined in these giant open pits by literal children, or what
mm,
are almost slaves. I mean, the World Cup in 2022 in Qatar, the stadiums were built by slave labor. You
mm,
know, we have to try to continue to build a world that not just benefits the people of the United States. If we want a sustainable world in which people view America as that shining city on a hill,
mm,
as the pinnacle of human intellectual, political, and social achievement, we cannot continue to be in America which exploits the rest of the world. We must be an America which tries to bring others up with us and
mm.
not just stand upon them to reach the great heights our nation is destined to reach and has reached. We must bring people with us. But that is what I have to say on that.
Is that view is when it comes to government, who's making the decisions, things are going to be radically different in the next, even say, we talked about when we're our parents' age. So the next 20 years, next 20 to, 30 years. What is going to be necessary change for a global society? Is that going to be singular, interconnected governance? Is that going to be polar? Is it going to be something else? Do you think it's going to be nationalist still, or do you think it's going to be different than that?
So the way I view in a perfect world, um, now I'll tell you where I think it will be, unfortunately, and then I'll tell you how I think it should be. So I don't think we are should aim for a single global government.
Mm,
Um, I mean, we're it's that is quite frankly it's impossible.
mm,
Just look at our tiny state of Maine and how all the different ways in which people want to live their lives and all their opinions. Extrapolate that to different nations, different races, different religions, different cultures. It's
mhm,
whew, God bless you, whoever tries to do that.
mm,
However, I don't think we can avoid a possible global catastrophe looking in the next several hundred years of our species' existence if we continue to be so divided by nationality.
mm,
We've possessed nuclear weapons for less than 100 years, and we already come to the brink, you
mm,
know? So looking long term, it's going to become increasingly difficult, I feel, to, especially with the rise of false information, when we move artificial intelligence into decision making, detached from those views of humanity. And I think it becomes increasingly likely that we face some kind of a catastrophe as a species. So we have to continue to work together. I personally favor the European Union model,
mm,
upon which countries in the European Union are independent nations. They're subject to their own laws and their own
mm,
jurisdictions. They have their own militaries. They pursue their own policies. However, they are united by a common currency, common trade policies, common travel policies. They
mm,
are united by all of these things, which make them say, like, I'm a European. Like they retain that independence. Uh, I mean, obviously, Europe, I mean, the EU, in my opinion, is equivalent almost to a proto United States of America. I mean,
mm,
let's face it, our states, California, if it was to be its own independent country, it would have an economy the size of Germany, one of
mm,
the most rich nations on earth. And it'd be bigger than Germany at this point.
mm,
So our states are essentially countries. But I think that additionally, I think it's extremely important as we move forward to rein in the unchecked growth of these huge global corporations. We have the world's first trillionaire now.
mm,
There should be no society like that is insane that we have a trillionaire. I'm well aware of how economics work. I'm well aware Elon Musk does not have $1 trillion at his fingertips. I'm well aware of stock market values and everything like that. However, I don't believe we can have a just world and I am a staunch capitalist, when we have such rampant exploitation and let's like lobbying. That's just
mm,
bribing politicians. You just call it lobbying. Like, are we being for real right now?
mm,
But I think we must try to. I mean, it's a new Gilded Age. In case you don't know what the Gilded Age is, that is the period from the end of the Civil War to about the 1910. This was an age in which, you remember in high school, the Vanderbilts, Rockefellers,
mm,
Carnegies. It's
mhm,
where these huge corporations built up all this political power and dominated the economic and political system in the United States. So I don't know why my screen is getting super white right now. Am I going crazy?
Is there a natural light in your room?
Yeah, there is. It's like actually insane how much it's glowing right now. Am I going crazy or is that?
You are glowing, yes.
Yeah, you'll have to cut this. So I'm gonna close my curtain.
Yeah, no worries.
I'm just reading.
You are radiant.
Yes. Okay. All right. Yeah. So we need to, and it doesn't mean moving away from our current system of economics, but it simply needs reform. We need to ensure that it doesn't get to this point again, where such a small selection of people hold so much power. That is not what capitalism is all about. That's not what democracy is all about. It is too much of a good thing, almost. So we need to ensure we continue to avoid that. And we cannot fall back into uh, especially with all these new technologies, we can't cede all this power to a select group of people who do not care about the common good. They care about themselves. They care about the rest of their billionaire class. Like I'm saying this, I am a capitalist, a staunch capitalist. But we need to rein that in. Otherwise, we're going to be facing a future upon which decisions are made by politicians who are bought and paid for, and decisions are being made that benefit a select few group of people because they're the ones with all the money and all the power. But alas, sadly, I view the future though as being a future in which this nation and other nations around the world are going to increasingly become dominated by corporations, taking advantage of new technologies such as artificial intelligence, which they have already a total monopoly over, and that monopoly will only continue to grow without massive, massive global grassroots change. I fear that we are not going to achieve what we wish to achieve as Americans and as a species. We cannot allow ourselves to be dominated by a group of 50 people around the world who have all the money. That is not sustainable. That is not what I believe in, and I know it's not what you believe in. It's not what anybody should believe in, even except for those 50 dudes. But alas, what do you think?
Hmm. Well, I certainly agree that there needs to be grassroots change in how we approach this myriad of factors, whether it be socioeconomic, political, cultural. There needs to be, I think, a setting similar to the European Union model, as you discussed, where it's a board of independent nations, entities that govern themselves at a domestic level, but at a global level, set policy for commerce, trade, travel, and in doing that, influences domestic policy and governance in such a way that those base principles promote prosperity. And that has to happen on an incremental scale. I think it's going to be incredibly important to elect leaders and establish leadership that have sustainability as a primary agenda. I think that it will be a collaborative effort amongst those leaders, and those leaders must be elected by the people. They must stand for and integrate principles that lift people up. And it is going to be an incremental process, a process that covers the holistic view of what it does mean to be human, and how we can ensure with all of these rapid advancements and how we view wealth and meaning is changing. It's going to be important to remain autonomous as a people and to enact policy, uphold leadership that is going to make that possible. And if that means having a board of representatives from every country in the world that discusses these topics in length, and it's going to be,
That's the UN, bud.
yeah, it's going to be years of rigorous efforts enacting, integrating, but it's important to strive for that representation and to strive for prosperous collaboration. And I'm curious to your take on this. We talk about these big changes that we undergo, and what is really important are the things that we do on an incremental level, the stuff that we do day to day to contribute these sorts of efforts, uphold them. A concept that I, I've discussed on this show with guests before it is voting with your wallet. So you're putting your investments into the things that you believe in, into entities or what have you that are aligned with your principles. What is your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, it's kind of the only thing that we can do um, as people who are not massively, massively wealthy.
Mm,
Uh, Not like your vote is the most important tool you have as an American. And it is incredibly important as an American to have an educated and well thought out vote.
mm,
It is important that you educate yourself, not just about. I mean, this is why studying history is important. You can learn lessons that you can apply directly to today, such as I brought up the Gilded Age earlier, talking about the economic era we're already in my opinion, since probably 2019-ish, maybe a little earlier. But anywho's, it is extremely important that people continue to educate themselves. I mean, we have a problem with people not only not voting in the country,
mm,
but just looking at, is it an R or is it a D next to the candidate that they're going to
mm,
vote for? They don't really think about the issues at hand. They don't think about the candidate at hand. It's
mm,
important that you educate yourself and stay abreast of global developments.
mm,
Watch the news, read a newspaper, you know, goodness gracious, read a darn book,
mm,
and don't just read Twilight. Love Twilight, but don't
mm,
just read Twilight, You gotta educate yourself a little here. Like, ignorance is a choice. You wake up every day and you can remain as ignorant as you are now,
mm,
or you can, even if it's 0.01%,
mm,
you can improve yourself. You can
mm,
make a conscious choice to be more informed, be more intelligent, more knowledgeable than you were the day before. Additionally, I think it's important that you make a conscious effort. And this is my opinion. Don't cede your critical thinking to a machine. Remaining and staying human is you're going to see a divide by the time our kids are in high school. We'll be able to tell which kids have been raised on parents ceding their control. I mean, we call them now, but what do we call, like, iPad kids?
mm,
Parents who've ceded control to a machine versus raising their child like as a human being. Now, here's the thing, and it's like kind of the dichotomy of education is: are we educating citizens, human beings, and Americans, or are we raising people ready for the workforce?
mm,
Because, quite frankly, you raise a kid as an expert in AI, they're going to excel in the workforce that this nation's going to have by the time they graduate high school. But
mm,
that's not what I believe the purpose of education is. I believe in this nation, the purpose of education is to produce Americans who are educated, who know what it means to be a human being, who understand the world around them, who understand the history of their nation. Uh, and I said it before. I'm not. I'll tell a student like if they're graduating. I'm rather sarcastic, but one of my often compliments with seniors who I appreciated having is I'm proud to call you an American, like a fellow American.
mm,
We have to make good Americans. We owe it to the people who are going to come after us. We owe it to our children. We owe it to the children of today and the children of tomorrow to make a better America for them and to raise them in an environment in which these values are instilled in them.
Mm.
And as you said, voting with your wallet. Don't buy from companies you don't support. If you like AI, don't buy from companies who are super against it. If you're against AI, don't buy from companies that support AI. And yeah, we can donate to politicians we believe in. I personally, at the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, I donated money to the Ukrainian Department of Defense. I mean, I don't know what they call it. I don't speak Ukrainian,
Mm.
whatever
Yeah.
it is over there. But yeah, that is what I have to say to answer your question.
Want to hear what are technologies that you are excited for over the next 10 to 20 years? What are some of the cool, fascinating things that realistically could be in place that could be beneficial?
Yeah, absolutely. I think on a safety level, I think like these new sensors that are going into cars that like stop them automatically
Mm,
and increase safety because car crashes are killers. So I think that is going to be a huge development that'll save so many lives. I mean, trying to combat cancers and things like that. We've really like, for example, breast cancer is going down rapidly across the nation. There's so much preventative treatments and new treatments for that now. We got to continue to I have no part of this, but people in the medical field are going to continue to improve upon that. Personally, things like I said, most of my technology uses for entertainment. Um, I am excited to see where we both play a good bit of video games, where it'll be. I used to play a lot of virtual reality video games, so that will continue to develop in a really cool ways for sure. Uh, and additionally, while I have apprehensions about it, if I remove my moral apprehensions, I think artificial intelligence, like used in open world games, does sound like a darn cool concept. Like, take Red Dead Redemption 2. If you could go to any NPC, talk to them, and they'll talk back like actual conversations, like you can, that does sound pretty darn cool. I cannot
mm,
lie about that.
mm.
Um, and of course, space flight. The future, the species is destined to travel into the stars. So, as space flight, I mean, we took a break. Cold War ended, but we're going back to the moon soon. Thank you, NASA. And I think it's going to continue to be exciting. I hope that I will live to see human beings on Mars.
Mm.
Uh, and I hope that I live to see first contact with aliens,
Mhm.
which are out there and real.
Yeah, I I agree. I resonate. One last thing. What is one principle that you want people to take away from today? From this conversation, we've covered lots of different things, peeled a lot of layers back. If somebody can take one thing that they can take action on now, what is that?
Ignorance is a choice. Remain informed about the world around you, or continue to educate yourself. As much as you and I love to dog on Braden, my brother, he has made a conscious effort the past 4 years. He is, goodness gracious, the kid reads books now.
Mm.
It's shocking to think about Braden. I hope he watches this episode. Now he's reading books, actively going to the library. He's asked me to buy him history books for Christmas. So ignorance is a choice. That is certainly the overall concept, I'd say.
Yeah.
And that leads
And
into being a good American.
and there's no excuse either. With
Yeah.
the availability of resources, of intelligence,
Yeah. And
there's
I
no,
mean, not like public libraries. You don't even need a phone.
yeah.
We have public libraries for a reason. They were some of the greatest concepts ever devised. So like, go to the library, read a book, you know.
Yep. Well, thank you for being on the show today. It is always a pleasure.